On to Blume Day 2022. We're thrilled to bring back the most awaited event of the early stage venture ecosystem after a gap of 2 years. Last year was a big year for us, our 10th year anniversary and 11th year in the business. And we were excited to bring you Blume Day X. But life had other plans. The world as we know it changed in 2020. With the spread of COVID-19, and 2021 became one of the hardest years for us as a country. Many of us in this audience today, myself included, faced loss and saw a system stretched beyond its limits, very close to home. But what stood out for most of us and will remain a defining moment of the year was the unbelievable human spirit and the desire to build a better world. The resilience, the humanity even in desperate times, and the ability to fight back. We'd like to take this moment to acknowledge every healthcare and essential worker, every volunteer, every donor, including many of you out in the audience, for the integral role that you played in helping us fight back. Last year also tested our ecosystem's ability to withstand a crisis. Countless businesses fighting to survive, pivoting to cater to a changing market, and founders evolving into leaders. This evolution is evidenced in the performance of the market. You've all heard the stat, right? The year 2021 saw as many unicorns be created as the 10 years before it. When we all saw you last Blume Day, Unacademy had just become our most valued portfolio company at a little short of $500 million. Today, 3 portfolio companies sit in the unicorn club, and another half dozen inching very close. 2021 also saw 11 startups IPO, including the first one led by a female founder, Ye, showing that the Indian market can indeed deliver successful exits. But the most important development in 2021 was India's gumption to be able to place spaces that were typically always left for the West. Space tech, electric vehicles, deep tech and its application in daily life. And over the last 2 years, Blume too has invested in many of these spaces. Today, this evening, we bring to you what we've been up to in the last 2 years, both in terms of our portfolio and our far-reaching thought leadership. But before that, speaking of what we've been up to, has anyone noticed anything different on your lanyards or the signboards outside or your registration kits and a certain tweet that Sajid may or may not have meant to send out last night? Yeah? Okay, if you did, or even if you didn't, we do have a story there. So requesting Karthik Reddy to please come up on stage to unveil the new Blume brand identity and kick off Blume Day 2022.
Thanks. I think it's the first time I need glasses. I need my reading cues. And it's good to be back. 25 months since we last saw you here. Thanks for all making it. Most of you have seen the logo, so there's nothing new about the logo. But let me just walk you through a bit of the history. Am I pointing this right? Yeah. Oops. I jumped something. Ha. Does anyone other than my family know what this image is? I think I spoke to some of the LPs in the morning. Do you know? What? No, it is a painting, of course. But it's the, back in 2010, when we were looking for a name, Sanjay and me, like good partner founders, ran all the names by our wives, and then they obviously shot it down. And the name that won was a name called Blume. And this work is from a 2010 show. My better half happens to be a famous artist. It was a solo show, and this work was titled Blume. Same spelling. It's the German spelling for flower. And that's how Blume was born. And then it went through some design iterations through the last 11 years. And the first of which was probably a cheap design job. We gave some kid to do this. I can't even remember how this Blume Ventures came up. But we stuck with it for 7 years, and it served our purpose. We were a startup, we were in a garage, and then we migrated. In 2018, we said we're growing up, Blume's growing up to be a much larger fund. we should now think of a new design. And what eventually came up was a lovely logo, but I think it quickly outlived its identity in 4 years. Primarily because I think the mandate that we gave to our designers back then was that we're looking for something which speaks of how much of a seed investor we are, what is our appeal to our founders, and if you can sense the B and the E were used as almost a handshake. So it meant a lot about what Blume meant to the founders, or it signaled a lot from the previous 7 years. But I don't think it would have lasted us that decade that we wanted it to. So we went back to a new designer, and we started thinking about what meets our bar for the next decade. And of course, blooms have been, the bloom as the flower, the English word, has been interpreted by famous artists all through history. And so the first cut was, all these iterations that we came up with, or designer came up with. And then one work out of Aditi's repertoire eventually became what is the new Blume logo out here. I think I ran through the video. I'm sorry about that. So a few words about the thought. I think when the person we hired, she did an extensive job of actually talking to about 20 of our stakeholders, including a lot of founders. I think the one remarkable consistency in what everyone said was why they like to work with Blume is because building a company is a very, very long-term journey, and you need someone who has your back. And we're very proud to sort of carry that mantle for all our founders. And over the years, as you know, Blume's kind of built a brand which is around a strong community and a platform offering. We do critical services like hiring with our Passion Connect team. And the brand identity before this, I don't think, reflected the ambition and the vision and what we had done in the last 4 years as Blume. As I said, Blume is a German word for flower, and we thought that should be the core identity of our logo. We've taken that image from the previous slide, and we went with a guiding line, which is May 1,000 Founders Bloom, which is something that I had actually told Jayant Sinha, the current BJP leader, when he was at Omidyar Network in my first pitch, trying to get a LP check from him 10 years ago. And so that's become kind of the center of the design elements around Blume. Sort of takes up our history, but looks at our future and says, and do we have a logo and an identity which sort of reflects our ambition for the next decade? So the final visual expression was deliberately not a complete Blume, because there's always room to grow, always room to learn. That's why I think Blume is positioned today. The petals are a little asymmetrical. They are slightly different tints. It kind of reflects our variety of founders that we have in our portfolio. And essentially, when they all converge, you see the magic in the middle, which are the stars that get formed. And those are our portfolio companies which sort of really erupt out and bloom out. For whoever's interested in typefaces, it's Proxima Nova. And this, I think, truly reflects our ambition for the next decade. So this is Blume 2022. So some of you have picked up your T-shirts. This is a tradition that Blume has had. I think it's our 8th, if I'm not mistaken. I hope it's not the 8th or 9th T-shirt. We do this annually. When you come into Blume Day, you get a goodie bag. Last year, a lot of you missed it. We gave it to you if we met you in the last 12 months. And this was our initial thought from 10 years ago, rather 2 years ago, that when we said when we have our 10th anniversary, this is very apt for the Blume message and who we are as a brand. And so last year's, well, we are the music makers, and I won't waste time on the poem, but it's an ode by Arthur Shaughnessy, and we've used this last year. This year, it's Power of the Underdog. If you walked in while the ad films were playing, you saw how our otherwise thought to be very small companies have all broken into the limelight. You saw Dunzo, Cashify, Healthify, An Academy, Spinny, Slice. All of these were not household names 2 years ago. But essentially, I think all our belief in these companies has come to the fore. And so we've gone with Power of the Underdog this year, and that's our T-shirt this year. So please enjoy that. So to go one step, one step back, I'll take cue from Radhika's message, right? It's been a very difficult period. And I wanted to sort of bring up the fact that we didn't get a chance to celebrate our 10th anniversary last year was a little sort of disappointing, but I wanted to mix that in this year and not lose the opportunity to thank my partners, my team. So Sanjay and Ashish, if you don't mind, please come up to the stage. I would love to finish this segment with both of you on stage as well. So if you want to share a word, you can. But broadly, I thought before we start off this day, like most of you founders, and I hope you get a chance to do this on your annual days and your annual celebrations someday. But after a decade, it feels like it would have been impossible to get here without the sacrifices of all our families. And if you don't mind, all our families, can you please stand up and so that the crowd can see you? I think it's, yeah, that's, please, Mr. Papadia, Mr. Nath, my parents, yeah. So it's the first time my parents have come for a Blume Day in 11 years. My daughter, yeah. Come on, Anai, stand up. So that's Mr. Nath's father, brother, and better half. This is my parents, Aditi, my wife, and Anahi, my daughter. Ashish, you want to introduce? Only Mr. Fafadia is here, so yeah. Thank you very much. This wouldn't have been possible without his sacrifices. You guys want to add a line, and then, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just, if we had to talk about family, we'd ask all of you to stand up here because all of you are family. Coming back to 1,000 flowers blooming, but I'll just say that some of you all have seen us from our first day. We had our first Blume Day at Breach Candy when we had we had about 40 people, and it was very informal. But the spirit is very much the same, and it's almost surreal to see that we've had 11 years. So thanks to all of you, all our supporters for being here. And this is amid, the current time. So thanks again.
I want to thank the team, especially the ones who made Blume Day possible. I don't know if all of you know, there was 350 meetings earlier in the day, over 6 hours, one floor below this, all between VCs and founders. I think a phenomenal job by Radhika, KV, and Swati to pull that off. As the leaders of that pack, Amal, who's going to be on stage, who, along with Sajid's, probably creating one of the most path-breaking annual reports that this country's venture ecosystem has seen, the Indus Valley Annual Report. And above all, Mesha, who kind of came from nowhere and took on this entire onus of being center stage of what will become Blume Day 2022. Thank you, Mesha. It wouldn't have been possible without you. You've seen colors on your tags. They obviously represent different groups, so you know who to look out for in the audience. Coming to a small, solemn, but yet what I think is a celebratory 3, 4, 5 minutes that I want to spend before we roll into the program. In the last 3.5 years, we've actually lost 3 founders at Blume. Ken Tai, co-founder at Hybrint. It was 2 till we made the deck 2 days ago. And 48 hours ago, Ken passed away too. So Ken, Naveen Sidrangani, who was co-founder of Glamorous. And Glamorous was with us in the same compound for 8 years, so very close in that sense. I think Venkatesh forgot to change the year. He was born 1966, Jan 1st. And Samir Bangara, who we tragically lost in the pandemic as well, not to COVID, The first two gentlemen, just for being fully transparent, we lost to cancer, the killer disease, and Samir to an unfortunate accident. And it's always a reminder that, have they, do all of us have a collective responsibility of taking their legacies forward? And so these are our three founders. So Ken, of course, was based out of Washington, D.C. He built a software startup. I'll speak for him. He, along with Nav Ghoshal, this is Ken, that's Nav. Nav is, as luck would have it, we've been trying to sell the company. We did manage to sell it in September for $50-odd million. It's not a publicly disclosed number. It was a great outcome for our Fund 2 investors. We made 10% of our fund back. But just a couple of months before that, he was diagnosed with late-stage cancer. I think he fought valiantly, but we lost him 2 days ago. So that's Ken. And for the other two founders, their legacies, here as well. They found a home. Nav is building inside of that home. But for the other two stories, I wanted to bring the co-founders who are continuing with those legacies and say a short few words on celebrating their legacies. Can I have Zubin first, please, to speak of Naveen? Here, Sanjay, consider. Come up, Zubin. Let people see you.
You were right about needing the glasses now.
No, go ahead. Yeah. You stand there. You stand in the middle, yes.
Naveen was not just my business partner at Glamorous. He was also my best friend. I knew him since our school days. And if there's one thing I can say about Naveen, it is that he was full of ideas. And Glamorous was his brightest. Naveen fought cancer through all the years that we grew Glamorous together. But you would have never known it if you saw him at work. He always had his enthusiastic stride when he entered the office, carrying with him his usual bubbly demeanor and his larger-than-life dreams. His exuberant spirit and his passion for everything he did, that's what really fueled everyone at Glamorous. And today I'm happy to say that we are on the verge of a milestone event, a big investment which is going to propel Glamorous to new heights and make his dreams come true. None of this would have been possible without Naveen and his gift, the ability to combine, extrapolate, and see things in different perspectives. And the countless hours that I spent with him, sifting through all those ideas, discussing each one in detail, is what I remember and miss about him the most. And it's also what I treasure about him the most. Thanks.
Thanks, Zubin. Thanks. Can I have Abhi and Sagar to say a few words about our friend Samir? So I love the forever idea, gentlemen, so I obviously stole it from my other founders as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Karthik, Ashish, Sanjay. Congratulations on a decade. Seems, like life has come full circle, because I remember you were in New York at around the same time, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, when we heard the great news that a new India fund is starting. Little emotional because it's about a year and a half, almost 2 years, it will be in June, since Samir left us. I, of course, knew him from well before business days. We were childhood friends. We grew up in Navy Nagar and Kolaba together, and I was in that friends, family, and fools round, which is when people put in money before the professionals come in. And of course, the vision there was just that, along with A.R. Rahman and Shekhar Kapoor, Samir had a great vision for something that back then was nebulous, and eventually today we all know it as the creator economy. And I'm happy to say that with his co-founder, Sagar, Kyuki has grown into India's largest creator economy company. We lost Samir about almost 2 years ago, and technically since March, which is about exactly 2 years ago, I hadn't met him because I was based in NCR and he was in Bombay. The lockdown started. We all were working remotely. So even when the tragic news came out, it was very hard to get closure on it. But I think what happened since then is that the kind of relationships he made in the industry with artists, with creators, with partners, was so phenomenal that, despite such a tragic and unexpected event happening, an event for which there's no playbook, there's no a formula to go back on. Not just his entire team, but the entire industry just sort of rallied around him, and there was no question of anything untoward happening with the business. And QK, in fact, has gone from strength to strength since that day. And it's, of course, been our goal to ensure that Sameer's legacy stays, forever, because he is technically, we would, we call him the pioneer of India's creator economy, because he was doing it before it was even a thing. And some of India's biggest digital stars today, who emerged from literally nowhere and are today, probably raking in as much as small companies, are all people who got their first check from Sameer. So that graffiti artwork is, in fact, something that graces our new premises that we just opened 2 weeks ago. So post-COVID, our first office in Mumbai has Sameer overlooking all of us. So I'd be very happy to invite all members of the Blume family to stop by and come and visit the office sometime. But thank you very much to Team Blume, and we'll make sure that Sameer's vision is realized in the long term. Sagar, a few words? No? Okay, an emotional moment for all of us, but thank you so much for this stage, Karthik.
No, thank you. It's very difficult, but thank you for doing this. Thank you. Radhika, I think we're back to you. Thanks for having us here on stage.
Thanks, Karthik. Thanks, Sanjay. Thanks, Ashish. And thanks, team, both the teams that came up on stage as well, Glamorous and Kyuki. The first generation of SaaS founders in India built for North America, leveraging a cost arbitrage. And that's how they got deep revenue, scale, traction. But there is a new generation of SaaS founders. They build for India. They build for SMBs. And they're able to get deep revenue and scale through transactions, marketplaces, and data. Your portfolio has a fair share of them. They're building for tuition centers, exporters, legacy food businesses. Inviting Sanjay Nath, Blume's co-founder, and if I may add, chief selfie officer, up on stage, as many of you would agree with me, up on stage to kickstart the next panel of the evening on redefining Indian SaaS.
As they just set up, Venkatesh, do I have my cue? Yeah. So we're going to play a video for you, which basically our colleague Apurva, who's a fantastic photographer and videographer, has put together for us to sort of walk you through our 10-year history. Take it away, please. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Apurva, for that great capture of our 10 years at Blume. And thanks everyone out here for being such an incredible supportive family for us. Now, back to the panel we started with, bringing Sanjay on stage to kickstart our next panel of the evening, Redefining Indian SaaS.
Good evening, everyone. Pleasure to kick off the first panel that we have here. And I'd like to welcome a dear friend. This is going to be, the panel's titled Global SaaS, SaaS, the Global Opportunity Comes Home. And I'd like to invite all the panelists to stage. Dear friend Arpan Sheth at Bain & Company. Arpan, if you're up here, please come up and join us. For those of you who know the venture ecosystem, Arpan is no stranger. Arpan's been a Blume LP almost from the beginning. In his day job, he's a senior partner at Bain & Company. And also, Arpan, please come up. And angel investor, board member along with us in quite a few of our companies, and also...
Start by saying two things. One, Karthik, Sanjay, Ashish, the production quality of Blume Daves has gone up astronomically over the course of 10 years. It's impressive. The second, I'll just relate a story, and it's impressive what you guys have built. I met Karthik and Sanjay in 2010. That was the first time I had invested in venture. Actually, it was my introduction, and at the time when I put money into Karthik and Blume, I was like, well, A, I don't really know what this is. B, I don't know if I'll get my capital back. But it certainly seems like an interesting ride. I did get my capital back. I actually got distribution today. And everything I've learned about venture and growth in India, it actually can be attributed to the relationship with Blume. So I just thank them a lot for that. So as Sanjay said, we're going to talk a little bit about India domestic SaaS. And I'll just start by maybe laying some contours. And most of you are smarter than I am and know this already, but global SaaS is $150 billion industry. It's grown at 30% a year. It represents 27%, about 25% penetration into the global software markets. Probably will grow at 25 to 30% for the next couple of years and be a $400 billion industry. Last year, global SaaS got $74 billion in growth in venture investing. If we sort of turn the lens to India, India is 6 to 7 billion of SaaS revenue, of which one and a half, probably closer to 1.5 is domestic SaaS, not sort of export SaaS. There's 4 to 4.5 billion, and Sajid will speak more about this, invested in India SaaS last year. And so the first question I'm going to start with is whenever I speak to investors, and I suspect those of you who serve India SaaS get this question, which is why would you build for India domestic SaaS? There's $70 billion, $73 billion that sits outside of India. Isn't it foolhardy to build for India? Is it worth it? And I'd love to just sort of, Mukul, maybe start with you, and then Shivku, just get your answer. Like, why did you build for India? Do you think that's a fair statement?
So thanks, Arpan, for that. So just a one-liner about Class Plus. We essentially build a OS which helps any coaching center, any creator, any independent educator launch their online teaching business. Now, for us, how we started and why we started this was, we think that SMB in India is an industry which never dies because SMBs are there forever. And SaaS is a great GTM for us to become a part of their business flow, their revenue outcomes, their monetary growth. And like me and Bhaswat, my co-founder, we often joke actually between us that every SaaS product, for whether it's for an SMB or enterprise, at certain stage of its life, it either becomes the CFO of that business or it becomes the CMO of that business, right? And we've realized that as we go bottom towards the pyramid, like our SaaS product has to become more of CMO, because only when you add $1 to their bottom lines, they actually pay you something. Yeah. But as you go up the chain, you can actually also build a product which might not be adding dollars, but saving significant enough and assuming a CFO kind of a proposition. So I think building for SMBs and enterprises, one, it's a great GTM. And secondly, you occupy one of these two very pivotal roles in their business, and you grow alongside. And I think that is the reason why we ever got excited by this.
That's fantastic. There's a thread that you, and then Shivko will come to you, that you spoke about, Mukul. That there's this pattern, I think, in India for India SaaS, where some of our SaaS companies that serve the local market become more like platforms, right? Adding features, serving, in your case, tutors on one side, students on the other side. You're introducing live video feed. You're introducing others. Do you think that's sort of fundamental to being successful as a SaaS player in India? Is you have to actually become more platform-oriented. I think there's others. Akansha, she's in the audience. She runs Love Local. I think I could argue that that's more platform-like. And you can see other examples. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I think it's worked. It's been very true in our case. Like, essentially, we've also realized that SMBs don't want to use multiple software products to run their lifestyle. They would rather do it in a very mundane and old school way. But if they want to use a tech platform, they want it to serve every cause. So for the first 1.5 years, and like before Blume put in a check, we were just a tool for them to manage their paperwork, solve their backend processes, or manage their attendance rules, which actually does not really move the needle for their business. Yeah. But once we were in a critical mass enough, and the students were already started on the other side, the students were already on the platform, they started selling content. The moment that started happening, there was a flywheel that why is it really, really necessary? So I think SaaS for SMBs can be a great GTM, whether you want to build into SaaS-enabled marketplaces or transactions or business flow or whatever else. But I think it's the greatest single GTM into any SMB in this country.
Fantastic. What about you, Shivku? You have this interesting perspective because I think you told me 60% of your business today is in India, 40% is Middle East and Singapore, but the origin was here, right? You started the business here. So how did you think about this? Like, why did you start here versus say, look, you know, in my sort of unified communications market, I should have gone global. Like, do you think there was a depth of market? Do you think there's a depth of market?
So now that I have everybody's attention, I also want to say two things before I answer your question. One, I think Karthik and Sanjay and Ashish, now that you guys have been around for 11 years, I feel like you guys will be around forever. Because 11 years is such a long time. And second, now that I have all of your attention, we have APIs for SMS, WhatsApp, voice bot, chat bot, video, and a contact center. I know that all of you are using some or all of this. I know that all of you have some problems with some of this, so in case you have any issues, please just talk to me. I'm right here. So when we think of Exotel, we think of both the telco aspect of the business as well as the software aspect of the business. And as you know, the telco market in India is actually pretty big. One of the largest in the world. And so we think of ourselves as the future of communication. And so I think even from the get-go, the market has always been large for us. So I think in my mind, some of the SaaS market definitions, I think part of our business fits into that, but part of our business also fits into minutes and data and numbers and messaging. And so interestingly, it looks to me that some of the largest B2B software companies in India today are communication companies. You could think of Route Mobile, you could think of Gupshup, you could think of us. So I think that has been the key.
Can I pause you there? Because I want to pull on this thread. Because I agree with you that some of the largest domestic SaaS companies are in communications, to your point, or sort of MarTech, right? Gupshup, to your point. CleverTap, majority of their business is here. Yellow, majority of their business is here. Yourself, and a few others. What is it about the domestic market that lends itself to creating scale SaaS players in these particular segments?
So I see two things happening in the market. First one, communication tech is a automatic consequence of the India internet story, which I think all of us believe in. So if all of the business transactions are going to get digitized, then naturally engaging with customers is a key part of it, and so that requires a lot of communication tech. So I think that's one way to think about why this aspect of B2B SaaS software is a big deal in the days to come. And the second one is, when I speak to enterprises, the themes again and again seems to be digitization and automation. It looks like the top 500 companies in India are all sitting with legacy old software.
Yeah.
And they've been fractured by new age tech native companies, let's say Think Zerodha. And so that's something that they want to change, and they are investing heavily in automation and digitization. And I think that's going to propel a lot of B2B SaaS in India in the future.
And so I'm going to come back to you. I think the other question I really like to get underneath, and I think it'd be helpful for everyone to understand your stories, is when you talk to SaaS companies or founders, you'll hear different, but some people say, look, my growth it's all about the product, right? That product-led growth. I need to make it viral, whether it's Atlassian or Slack. But I'm curious, in India, does that hold true, or and I know it's a complicated, multivariable question in some ways, that it's go-to-market, it's customer success, it's product, also probably pricing and how you approach it. Both of you have now built large businesses and scaling rapidly, particularly domestically. What combination was the unlock? What was sort of the hurdle? Was it getting the right go-to-market motion? Maybe Mukul, we'll start with you. Was it getting the right pricing? Because in your case, right, you're dealing with tutors who never bought. I assume you're their first product in a way, right? So you had to convince them to share part of their income with you. So what was the unlock?
Yeah, so it was a cultural shock to us when we first went to coaching centers. Yeah. And we said that, do you ever purchase anything? And the only product that I ever purchased before was Just Dial, which essentially tells them that we'll give you more students. Yeah. And on the other hand, we came and said that we'll charge you as much money, but we'll definitely not give you any students, right? So, and that's where the hard part of it began. But over the next few quarters, and actually it still continues today, I think almost all the biases or notions I had about how to build a product have been proven wrong. Right?
They've all been wrong.
Absolutely. They've all been shattered, right? In fact, now, if a designer at ClassPlus brings a very fancy UI, it is most likely to get rejected in the next 5 seconds, right? So, in fact, so many people actually have jokingly called, and they still call, we are a very desi product when you look at the fields of it. Like, we are one of those segments where probably square edges are preferred more over rounded edges, right? Which is a design principle anomaly, right? But it works. It works in our segment. 78% of our customers today are in tier 2 and tier 3, with 48% in tier 2 and 30% in tier 3, right? Okay. So, so that was a big cultural shock for us. Don't build a very fancy product. Build as simple as it could, even if it looks very, very primitive. Even if it looks 90s, it's totally fine. We also, personally, have not seen many freemium to premium products actually scale in India, right? And we essentially were probably one of the first paid SaaS products in the country, right? And surprisingly, our retention curves went higher when we started doing paid products, right? Because we realized that now these SMBs are extremely harsh, and if they have given you money, they will get you to do their work, right? So the product quality actually went up. And as growing forwards, like these things actually taught us inside the company, like chasing vanity metrics while building SMB SaaS is the worst thing to do. Yeah. Your metric should be actually like how simple your product is to be used, what are your cohorts performing, are they paying you something or not? And ultimately, we've also realized that this is just the first level order problem. At the end of the year, if our product is not adding a single dollar to his top line, he'll most probably not take you the next year. And now these things look very counterintuitively true. But I think along the process of growing up, we all got very corrupted when we read like 1,000 books on product management. Yeah. But we learned all of that hands down by making those errors in class. So it's been like a totally opposite journey.
That's fantastic. Well, Shukit, you have a slightly different target audience, right? It's not, there are some SMEs in there, but not smaller ones like Mukul. You have enterprises, you have mid-sized business. What was the unlock for you as you kind of look back on, because you started this 10 years, maybe even longer ago, right? So if you think, what did it take in India?
Your question is a little bit of a complex one, so I'll answer
That's
it in
right.
3 stages. So one, I think there's no getting away from the fact that you need to go to the customer, enterprise perspective I'm giving, with something that they want. So there needs to be a hook, and it needs to be outbound, and it needs to be objective-driven or goal-driven or solutioning-driven. And product is a consequence of the solution, the business objective that they are trying to achieve. I think that in an enterprise context, that's actually absolutely clear to me. I tend to also think that customer success is a very important part of if you have a multi-product strategy, customer success is actually extremely key. Your ability to increase wallet share and sell other products, I think the top of the funnel is actually customer success. So we need to nail that, which is NRR, NPS, CSAT, and so on and so forth. So that needs to be nailed. And I think, in my opinion, in enterprise, product plays the role of enabler of helping large enterprises achieve their business objectives. So it's unlike mid-market or SMB where people buy products off the shelf and start using. In enterprise, it's totally solutioning.
You've got to integrate. Let me get this next question, because I'm going to stick with you, Shivku. I'm going to go back to the origins. I talked about global SaaS, $150 billion industry. India, domestic SaaS, $1.5 billion. Inevitably, someone's going to push you guys to say, well, the prize is over there. Go build for, whatever it is outside of India, US, Singapore. So the question I have for you is how difficult is that if you start your focus in India and you build for India because you've done the things that Mukul said or you've said, to then shift the business or add to the business, let me say add to the business, to focus on a US market or a Singaporean market or a Saudi? Like what change, can it be done? You've done it, so the answer is yes. But how difficult a mind shift is this? And Mukul, you're on that journey, so you're just beginning that journey.
So I do think that US is easier said than done. I've actually traveled multiple times to the US to try to find an angle of attack, and I've not been able to find one. It seems to be extremely crowded, and the expectation in terms of quality of the product from the customers is sky high. So I've not been able to convince myself that it's simple to just rip and replace what you're doing in India in the US. It seems very hard for me, actually.
But you've done it in adjacent geographies.
Correct. So we've done it a little bit better in Southeast Asia and in the Middle East, where the market dynamics seems to be slightly more similar to India's. And we've actually followed 2 approaches that has worked. One is we've built a channel partner reseller network over time in this region, and it seems to be working very well, especially for our contact center software business. And on the platform business, we actually tried to mimic the India internet story, the solutions to that in Southeast Asia. And so we weren't going and selling everything. We were actually very specific about the logos that we want to reach out to and the solutions, because we know that if it works for Flipkart, if it works for Ola, we know it will work for Grab, it will work for Lazada. So that's the way we thought about it. So we really only had about 20 companies to talk to in Southeast Asia, and we got like 3 of them.
What do you think, Mukul? How are you going about it?
Yeah, I think we are still in very early days of going international. Like we're live in a couple of countries, and again, like we consciously decided to not even think about going to the US, because when I Googled, I found at least more than 150 companies doing very, very similar stuff. So we said that's not a point, but so we started with a little with Southeast Asia only. Still very early days for us, less than a quarter. But what we have realized is that so getting a SaaS product out there in India actually requires you to be good at product. It requires you to be good at sales. I'm somebody who actually doesn't think that if done ethically and correctly, I don't think sales-led growth is bad, right? It has its own merits. And it also requires you to be good at customer success. Now, how I think is that we're not building just a product, we're building a company. And if we can do these good things in a very, very varied and hard geography like India, a lot of the challenges that we might be facing over there will actually be solved. And we'll probably have more things to cut down than to actually build on top. And cutting down is comparatively easier than building. And that is where we thought that at least let's put some bandwidth of the company in going international, because the AOVs are like at least 7x to 10x higher, bare minimum. And even then, in fact, funny incident, so we priced our product and we thought that it's higher price than India. So we took it in a country, we priced it X. It was still 80% cheaper than the next product out there in the country. A customer did not buy it. We actually called him up and we said that, tell us the true reason. He said that since you were so low price that we thought it was a cheap product. And when I say cheap, not the pricing one.
Fantastic.
So which is a totally new learning for us on how outside geographies actually think about pricing. So yeah, but it is an easier problem to solve than
It's an easier problem.
raising your prices is a much easier problem than
Fantastic.
lowering your prices.
They're shining flashlights at us, so I think that probably means they want us to get off the stage. But just one 30-second question.
No, I think they're saying 5 minutes left. Oh, that was 5 minutes ago? Okay.
That was fine. Okay, just one more question. And I know we're ruining your timeline. And both of you are pre-wired for this. What company, other than yours, do you think's done a great job of building a domestic India SaaS business? Like, which one do you admire? And maybe one or two just quick statements, like why?
It looks like Salesforce is cracking it.
Yeah, I was surprised by that answer.
So, this is slightly anecdotal, but it looks like bringing in Arundhati, I think, maybe because of the network, the connections that she has. I think it looks like Salesforce is doing really well. I've heard things like they actually have 10% price hike baked into their contract. They do stuff like that, and they're able to get away with something like that, which is incredible. And practically every company that I speak to is either buying it or is already integrating into Salesforce.
What about you, Mukul?
I think two answers to this. I think products like Hasura and Postman, I don't code myself, but our developers seem to love them. So as long as the customers love them, I think it's a great category. The dev products are extremely good SaaS. Secondly, not a particular company, but I think in general a category called marketing automation. I think it is, we built something like that in our product. It is the second most used feature on the product today. I think marketing automation in itself looks like magic to the end customer. And I think everybody, right from CleverTap to WebEngage to Yellow to everybody, I think that category in itself is going to grow so fast. I love it.
So mine, other than X Hotel, is Gupshup, which is a competitor of yours in some ways. I think they built a 100 million plus ARR business in India. And it's almost exactly for the reasons that both of you said. They've tapped into the consumer story, right? Derivative of that. Lots of buyers, to your point. And they've made their product and pricing packages very specific to the country. So thank you guys. And thank you to the Blume team for allowing us to carry on.
Thank you, Arpan.
Thank you, Arpan. Thank you, Mukul. Thank you, Shivku. Thank you, Sanjay. Kunal Bajaj, who, by the way, as some inside gossip, was voted most young-looking employee at Blume in our last offsite in December, joined us in the middle of the pandemic to lead and build our capital networks team after a successful career in entrepreneurship, growth investment, and investment banking. Requesting Kunal to please come on stage and take us through how the portfolio has shaped up over the last couple of months, how it's grown through the pandemic. We know many of you haven't had a chance to meet him because of COVID restrictions, but hopefully we'll change that tonight. Thank you.
Thanks for having me here. We'll just walk through some of the investments Blume has made over the last 2 years between last Blume Day and next over this video, and then we'll come through what we're up to next. Venkatesh?
I'm Ranjan Reddy. founder of Bureau.
I'm Shashank, co-founder and CTO of Stage.
Parveen Singhal, co-founder and CCO at Stage.
I'm Vinay, co-founder and CEO at Stage.
I'm Pallav Pandey, co-founder and CEO of yulo.com.
Saurabh Chandra, I run Ati Motors.
I'm Pulkit Khurana, co-founder of Battery Smart.
I'm Avinash. And I'm Raghav. We are the co-founders of Electric Pay.
I'm Ayushi. And he's Nikhil. We are the co-founders of Alipo.
Hi everyone, I am Shruti. I am one of the founders of Apna Club.
Hey, hi everybody, this is Divyanshu, co-founder and CEO at Glamplus.
Hey, hi everyone, this is Rohan, co-founder and CEO at Glamplus.
My name is Arjun Kumar and I co-founded Medfin along with Arun Kumar and Siddharth Gurjar.
Hey, I'm Avis, co-founder and CEO at Pixel.
Hi, I'm Kshitij, co-founder and CTO at Pixel.
Hi, I'm Viral and I'm a co-founder of Smart Staff.
Hi everyone, I'm Divyanshu. I'm the co-founder and CEO of SourceWiz.
This is Mansij. Watch out for Zapscale.
My name is Mohit. I'm the founder of UltraHuman.
My name is Indra. I'm one of the founders of Scribble Data.
I'm Vishalini, the founder of Zippy.
We're building India's first live upskilling platform for women to learn and set up their home business.
Apna Club is an agent-led B2B wholesale platform for fast-moving consumer goods.
We are the first in market globally to bring 3D LiDAR-based bots that fit into customer environments, handling indoor, outdoor, ramps, tough flooring, because we believe bots should adapt to customer environments and not the other way around.
We are India's largest battery swapping network for electric 2 and 3 wheelers.
We help remove friction and fraud from your user journey, from onboarding all the way to checkout. We take care of risk so you can take care of business.
We are building India's largest and most trusted electric vehicle charging platform.
Think of the Electric Pay app like Book My Show or Airbnb, where you can discover, use and pay for charging your EV anywhere.
Team Glamplus is building a SaaS-enabled tech marketplace for SMB, salons, spa and similar beauty businesses in the APAC market.
Medfin is pioneering the ambulatory care revolution in India. We are deploying the latest surgical techniques that provide much better medical outcomes and quicker recovery times at the most affordable costs.
At Pixel, we are building one of the world's most advanced Earth imaging satellite constellations, which will provide global coverage to our customers on a 24-hour basis.
Smart Staff is a full-stack, blue-collar workforce management platform that is designed for large manufacturing companies.
At SourceWiz, we are building an operating system for exporters to help them run their entire business on our platform, right from sales and marketing to inventory management, production planning, payment processing and logistics.
We are building a Netflix for Bharat. We are a dialect-based hyper-local video entertainment platform for the next billion users in India. And we currently have 100,000 paying subscribers and launching new dialects very, very soon.
As we know, metabolism or metabolic disorders are essentially a problem that's actually faced by almost 1 billion people globally. So via the power of biomarkers, we help people understand their health, their metabolic health.
At yulo, we are building a social learning platform for K-8 students.
We give the deepest customer health score. In one day you onboard, it rocks.
Zippy helps software teams across the world prioritize and debug their customer issues in minutes.
We are a feature store company. Our data platform helps businesses take raw data and convert them into enriched data sets.
Thank you. For those who came in late, quick recap of Blume Ventures and where we've been so far. $280 million fund. We're raising another $200 million fund, 3/4 of the way there. The mark-to-market of our portfolio is today $901 million. And there's about $12 billion of enterprise value at the top 30 companies. And these are companies where we were the first institutional check into these founders. In fact, there's a couple of founders over here, Turtlemint for one, which were actually incorporated at the Blume headquarters as their initial corporate address. Our investment strategy, quickly to recap, is about 2/3 in India consumer internet, 1/3 in global software and enterprise across a bunch of sectors. We'll do 30 or 35 investments at seed or pre-series A in Fund 4, $1 to $2 million average check size, 12 to 20% average ownership, with about 5 to 10% in scout and network programs. Some of these scouts and network associates are actually with us here today. We keep fairly deep reserves in our new funds, 2 to 1. And why our actual edge here is in how we help founders win. We're proud to have what is probably India's largest platform service. The platform service exists to make sure that we help founders succeed. We now have collectively about 60 people helping our portfolio companies acquire talent, helping them deal with CFO functions, outsource CFO and legal functions, and then actually go out there and attract the best quality capital and also community and learning. This is why founders love us. We have a whole bunch of endorsements over here. Keep sending in your tweets, founders. We love to see this. And while we were building Blume in the pandemic, our founders were actually building something even bigger. We've got 3 new unicorns from the Blume portfolio. The first one, Unacademy, valued today at $3.44 billion. Unacademy has about 1 million different video lessons, 3.5 billion minutes of lessons watched, with about 14,000 educators. Spinny, $250 million in revenues, now valued at $1.75 billion. And Slice, which today has over 8 million registered users and is India's 7th largest card issuer. And this is not by flow, this is actually by stock of outstanding cards out there across all banks and fintechs. 6 unicorns on the heels. Gray-orange is Amazon Robotics for everyone else. Dunzo is India's favorite quick commerce app. Purple is Ulta Beauty or cosmetics for the masses. Turtlemint is India's largest reseller network for insurance with over 120,000 agents. Class Plus is Shopify for EdTech, empowering educators to connect with their students. And Carbon Clean is one of the fastest growing companies we have in our portfolio, building carbon capture solutions for global Fortune 500 companies. Our unicorn pipeline getting bigger, better, faster. 37 companies now worth more than $50 million, 23 valued at $100 million, 16 at $200 million, and 9 companies valued at more than $500 million, including the 3 unicorns you saw recently. This is a portfolio of category leaders we have at Seed. Put a whole bunch of consumer names here, bunch of enterprise names over there. And thank you to our co-investors who are here in the audience today. We're thrilled that these co-investors, some of the best investors in the world, have partnered us and our companies as they grow from here to infinity and beyond. If you'd like to meet any of these companies, please get in touch with me. My name is Kunal Bajaj, and you can find me at this email, capitalnetwork@blume.vc. Thanks.
Thanks, Kunal. So, we all grew up as kids with moms and grandmoms telling us to eat our vegetables, right? My biggest nightmare was palak. I'm sure everyone had their own. And then as young adults, as teenagers, we hopped from one diet fad to the next. But the growing realization is that each body, each system is different. And so the future of health is customized. The future of healthcare is tech and device-led. The new obsession in the Blume team has been tracking our glucose levels continuously. So at our subco runs, at our team lunches, even on intense travel schedules, we're constantly monitoring our ultra-human screens. What is ultra-human? If you didn't manage to catch them on one of the floors today, here's a quick video for you to take a glimpse into.
Stepping onto the tracks, my mind is suddenly tuned into everything. Everything around me and everything within me. I feel my pounding heart. I hear my racing mind. I feel every little fiber of my muscle burn. While the blocks hold me down, The gunshot sets me free.
You can understand with this why we're so obsessed. Well, one employee of ours, who some of you may remember from this very stage 2 years back, took this obsession a little too far and joined the sweeter side of things, should we say? Inviting Karthik, who some of you know as KS, the eternal Blume and now Team Ultrahuman, on to kick off the next panel of the night, Biohacking for Everyone.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. Thank you, Radhika, for that slightly embarrassing but nice introduction. Today's topic is biohacking for everyone, means different things to different people. We define it as self-improvement to help improve your physical, mental well-being. I can't imagine a cooler set of people to discuss this with. First off, we have Mohit, who is the founder of Ultrahuman. The second person I'm kind of bittersweet about because it means that I'm the second funniest person on stage now. We have Rohan Joshi, India's favorite comedian. And Heath Matthews is a world-renowned physiotherapist, has worked with some of the best athletes in the world. So folks, we only have 20 minutes, I've been told. We'll get right into it. I want to start with Rohan. I can imagine stand-up being super stressful, creatively demanding. Do you have any daily rituals or practices that you follow to keep yourself at the top of your game?
Many things. So the biggest problem with our profession and the people in it is that we're tremendously indisciplined people. Our lives lack any kind of structure. We take 6 a.m. flights, we take 5 a.m. flights, we take 4 a.m. flights. Sometimes we're trying to make it through 3 cities in a weekend, do all of that stuff. So yeah, we definitely need that. I think every comedian that I know goes through this personal graph of, I'm sure it happens in your field as well, this personal graph of where you just sort of keep going, then one day you crash completely, and then you look at yourself in the bathroom mirror and you go, I gotta fix some shit about my life, otherwise I'm going to die.
Every day.
Right? So every day, right? Exactly. And yeah, so I have rituals. One is I make sure that I get enough sleep before a show. I make sure that if I travel somewhere early in the morning, I carve out a chunk of time for like a nap. I make sure that I don't overdo the stimulants. I allow myself 1 cup of black coffee about an hour to 30 minutes before the show. And the other thing that I do is, because 95% of being on stage is a combination of being hydrated enough and also not immediately needing to pee while you're up there.
Interesting.
95% of the job is that equilibrium. So what I try to do is I try to hit a combination of those two. And I eat well. Those are the 3 things or the 4 things that I do before every single show. I don't drink. I don't do any of that stuff because for me, like, the most important thing is I need to have all my information well organized in my head, ready to pull out at any point in time. And then I save all the indiscipline for after the show. That's the ritual. We kick all the indiscipline back to the after party.
Awesome. So keeping it super simple in some ways.
Yes, very, very, very simple, very, very clean as far as possible. Just hit your basic markers, eat well, sleep well, and just have your head clear when you step on stage.
Awesome. Awesome. Heath, you've worked with some of the best athletes, right? Would love to understand, are there anything that those folks do that are applicable to the rest of us from a biohacking, longevity perspective that you've seen?
I think working with athletes is working with any successful individual at the end of the day. You have to have very clear goals And very importantly, you need to know the processes that need to be in place to get to those goals. You know, everyone loves to see, visualize that they're going to stand on the podium with a gold medal around their neck, or they're going to be, the most successful startup company in the world. But what are the steps that you're taking to make sure that you reach that goal? What is the realistic timeline, and how are you measuring yourself along the way? So I think one of the things that I enjoy most about working with sports and athletes is that we say, what are we doing today?
Yep.
Okay, don't worry about what's going to happen, 3 years from now at the Paris Olympics. What are you doing today? How does today affect this week? How does this week affect this month? How does this month affect this quarter? And does this quarter have a big impact on the year? And at the end of that, is my year, this year, building that path towards my goal in 2 years from now at the Paris Olympics? And I think having those very clear goals in place and the processes to achieve those goals is critically important. And then discipline. Without discipline, day in and day out, making sure that you self-regulate when you feel like you're moving off path, that's critical. You need to have that self-discipline in place.
Interesting. And I know we didn't discuss this question, but it's something that just popped into my mind is, if you're talking about mindset, how important are things like focusing on what you can control, or gratitude? Are these biohacks? Are these things that you can do?
Massive biohacks. And this is a problem at the elite level, right? You've constantly got to remind even the best players, listen, you can only control what's within your ability to control. So if I'm a tennis player, I can control how I bounce the ball, how I stand correctly, how I deliver the serve to my opponent. I can't control what they do with it, right? I can only control the processes that I have control over, and then I need to be very open-minded to respond to the reactions and the stimuli that come my way. Yep. And I think that's a great lesson in life, right? You know your boundaries, know what you are capable of and what you're good at, execute that to the best of your ability, and then be ready to respond to what comes back to you.
Awesome. One thing I want to chat about, and I think it's relevant for a lot of people here who are in stressful jobs, and sleep, right? Huge. Would love to hear from all of you, actually, things that you've tried around sleep, things that may have worked, things that you're still trying to do. We can start perhaps with Mohit.
Yeah, I think from a sleep perspective, what I have realized is that it's hard to avoid waking up till late. It's a very hard thing to plan for, and you can't really sleep early, right? I mean, all that, I'll sleep at 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. and wake up early. That isn't going to happen. I realized that very, very late. So the only thing I think that worked really well was sleep discipline, which is if I'm sleeping at 1 a.m. every day, I sleep at 1 a.m. every day and wake up at the same time as well. So your circadian rhythm, your melatonin cycle, all of these things, sort of driven by some of those factors. It's sort of like an adaptation for the lifestyle that you want to live.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And the other thing is, sorry to interrupt, but the other thing is have the discipline to set your bedtime and your wake-up time and try to stick to that as best as possible. But it's not a one-size-fits-all. Yeah. So some people, I love to go to bed early and wake up early. My wife is a night owl, right? She does her best work after the kids go to bed. That's when she really comes into her own, and then she works until quite late, but she likes to sleep in, right? That works well for her, doesn't work well for me. So you've got to figure all of these things out and then find what works best for you when it comes to a lot of these biohacks. Don't follow the fad. Take that information and then process it and come out with your answer at the end.
For me, there's also an element of what is my state of mind when I fall asleep as well, right? I try not to go to bed agitated. I try not to go to bed immediately after a heavy meal. I try not to go to bed. So I have basic rituals there's a point about an hour before bedtime that I cut off all screen time. If I'm in a place where I can't cut off screen time, I make sure that I'm definitely not reading the news or reading political commentary or reading anything that's likely, or work emails or anything that's likely to aggravate me right before I go to bed. I try to wind down by reading a book, resting my eyes, calming down, and just basically trying to make sure that I get to bed in the calmest fashion possible. Because sometimes the worst thing that can happen is you go to bed agitated, you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning or something like that, and that thought is front of mind, right? And then now that's defined how you've woken up and started your next day as well. So I try to calm down before going to bed. Isn't always possible, but I try to make it happen.
Awesome. And now we live in this world where you have access to data on what's happening inside the body, technology. Do you guys use any of that? Any things you really like to help track things and increase, longevity?
Well, I, for one, definitely like sort of having the data, right? Today, whether it's the sort of data that an ultra-human gives you, or today, like, whether it's the basic data that my Fitbit or my watch will give me. Like, for me, the game changer was, I got COVID a couple of months ago. And I knew before COVID what my workout metrics were on my watch or my Fitbit. So after 5 weeks of sort of being at home, being in bed, I tried to get back to working out. And I immediately saw that the same things that I could do earlier, now my heart rate was all over the place. My calories were all over the place. My sort of sugar measurement, all over the place. So that's when I realized that I obviously have to take a couple of steps back because this is not, I shouldn't be hitting 165, 170 BPM on like a basic run, right? So then that leads to a sort of conversation with my coach, which I believe is also very important, that any kind of training or training goals are there in open conversation, right? It's not just that you set the goal and then you railroad, go into it. So I like to use the data and talk to my coach and then be like, do we need to step back? Can we step it up? Do we need to say, go do something else for a bit until the body is ready for this? So yeah.
Super cool.
When you're dealing with athletes, a lot of this wearable technology is at the fore and is getting much more popular these days as well because we need instantaneous insight. We almost need it on the fly so that we can change what's happening as we're going. I think the future of health is going to be very wearable and data-driven, extremely so. And I think that we're going to get to the point in about 10 or 15 years from now where a lot of the information that we need, we won't need to go treasure hunting around the medical profession to get. A lot of that is going to be AI, machine learned insights that are coming out that is monitoring us on a day-to-day basis, giving us averages, giving us trends that we need to be aware of. We're going to take that information to the correct specialist, and we might look at one or two different options, but the actions are going to be much, much, much more precise. And I think, you know, what we're doing at the moment, what's exciting about what you guys are doing is that these are all the things that over time, once we really, really fine tune them, are going to be, you know, they're going to keep us in the right direction.
Awesome.
Hopefully make us live longer as well.
Hopefully. In the interest of time, last question for everyone here. Top 3 tips for the audience in terms of biohacking. We'll start with Mohit.
Top 3 tips. Sleep at the same time, wake up at the same time almost every day. Find out a way to metabolize your pizzas. That's important. If you're not having pizzas and if you don't figure out a way to metabolize those, you're not going to last. And don't die. Third one. The top 2 are the ones, basically.
It's very telling that 2 out of the 4 people on this panel about health are wearing very loose t-shirts on purpose. I think it's very, but I think top 3 hacks, one is listen to your body. Like just constantly, it is always trying to tell you things in 100 different ways. Today, even whether it's the data ultra-human gives you or a watch gives you, whatever, it is at best what a translation of something your body is trying to tell you, right? Your body tries to tell you through symptoms. It tries to tell you through pain. We were joking about this earlier, but I said at the start, I've learned more from my morning dumps than I have from any self-help book or podcast. If you just listen to them, if you just watch them, if you go, why was this good today? Why was this not good today? Did I not work out? Did I not eat enough fiber? What's up with my body? What's going on? Just listen to it constantly. That's one hack. 2 is, like he said, sleep discipline. And 3, this is a big one. Really start doing keyword searches on like food labels. The more you learn about food labels, and I mean, as horrible as this sounds, like the absolute lack of any standards required to use certain words on food labels, your relationship with food will change dramatically, is what I noticed. Like I stopped falling for the healthy and the baked and the this and that. And it's way simpler than you think if you just find out what those words mean.
Awesome. No, that is so interesting. That's it.
Cliche, unfortunately, but number 1 is nutrition. And it doesn't matter. There's no one diet format that works for everybody. You have to figure out what works best for you. As a South African, I used to only eat meat. Growing up, that was what I did. And nowadays, I am experimenting vastly with so much food that, you know, I'm on the verge of being vegetarian, right? And so those things might be because my body has evolved over a period of time in certain ways and I've adapted to it, but nutrition is number 1 for me. You must get really good at what you put into your body because it's the first line of medicine. You know, you talk about your gut biome, you talk about your mental health. It's all linked in with what you put into your stomach. Number 2 is sleep. Figure out what works best for you in terms of sleep. And number 3 is exercise. And that doesn't mean balls to the wall, you know, bust it out every day. It means getting the right kind of exercise for you so that you can meet your health and wellness goals and it's sustainable. everything must be sustainable or it's not worth your time and energy.
On that note, thank you so much. It's been a super fun discussion. I've learned a lot. Thank you for having us, Blume.
We'll pause for a quick picture on stage. I'm trying very hard to not photobomb this star-studded picture. By star, I mean KS, by the way. So most of you, I'm guessing, already know or have at least read about Sajid, right? Our in-house literary Yoda. And as I often say, both famous and infamous on Twitter. For the last couple of years, Sajid has been our sutradhar of our understanding of the Indian market for our LPs, given that he's one of the most frequently cited writers on how the Indian consumer can be looked at, whether it's his categorization of the four Indias, the deep understanding of EdTech, or my personal favorite, the avocado consumer. Over the last couple of months, Sajid and Amal have done a 360-degree breakdown of the Indian market for all of you in their Indus Valley annual report. And while this report will be out for public consumption tomorrow, we have a quick glimpse into what they're working on now. Over to you, both of you.
Click here? Yeah. Okay, it works. Super excited to be here and tell you a little bit about what we've been working on and what we've discovered. So Indus Valley is what we refer to as, it's our moniker for the Indian startup ecosystem. Kind of takes its inspiration from the term valley, of course, but instead of calling it Silicon Nagar or Silicon Halli, we said we'll kind of just take the valley part. And of course, it's a tribute to Indus Valley, our ancestral civilization. More than geography, it's about attitude. It's about a spirit of jugaad, of chutzpah, of dekhi jayegi. And Indus Valley annual report is really about a celebration of that. It's also about taking stock of the year gone by, of what it portends, okay? And really that's what Indus Valley annual report is. We hope it becomes an annual property, an annual event that we can update every year. 3 structures, the report's going to be out, I think hopefully late Thursday, early Friday, and that's day after tomorrow. And has 3 sections, about 100 odd slides, covering these 3 topics. We know that we can't really take you through 100 slides in the next 15 minutes. So what we've done here, Amal and I, is really take out about 20 slides and structure into 7 sections, which kind of give you a glimpse of the report. I'm going to start off, Amal, and then just interrupt me when if you need to so let me hear. So the first theme is about India as a country of contradictions. So we looked at understanding India through 3 lenses: contradictions, data, and ideas. I keep joking that Karthik collects art and all I do is collect tweets. But they're not ordinary tweets. They're one-of-a-kind tweets. They kind of represent India in all its complexity, all its madness and mystery. And this one here I've selected, which is about the marriage between very traditional forms of commerce, like someone coming up to you and trying to sell you something, selling pens at a Bangalore traffic signal, probably Silk Route, and is using Google Pay based on UPI. It's one of the most advanced payment systems to do it. It kind of typifies the contradictions that exist in India. And here's another one, and it's an incredible stat that 1 in 8 Indian pilots are women pilots. On my last 3 flights, there's been and this is something I started noticing after I saw this data, one of the pilots has been a woman. But extraordinarily, that's 12% the highest. It's almost double of Canada. Scandinavia doesn't even feature there. But on the other hand, if you compare it to female labor participation rates, only Morocco has it worse than us. It's extraordinary, these two contradictions. And quickly leaping to ideas of India, which I mentioned. One way to see India is through the prism of taxes. There's an English tax. So if you speak English, you typically earn more money. And average, it says 34% from an academic paper, but I think it's probably 3x. You can see India in terms of a tax, a regulatory tax. We'll also highlight crypto, but this is really a funny one which came on pizza topping. And lastly, logistics. I won't dwell into this, but India can be understood the various taxes and frictions that exist. There's another metaphor for India as a country that grows at night, whenever the government is not looking, right? And the three examples here, I'll probably not go into all of them, but really the crypto one is a great example of the government not doing anything and an entire industry, an incredible industry just coming up overnight. India Grows at Night comes from actually Gurcharan Das's book actually. I thought it's a fantastic line. Lastly, as far as the ideas of India goes, one way to see India, and it's a country of difficult social mobility. It's not easy, unlike the US, for example, to kind of leap up in class. But when we do it through three axes of advancement. The first is English. English is the primary pathway to up your social class. The other is exams, where you break through to land a government job. And finally, it's probably going abroad or exit. So English, exams, and exit become the three axes of advancement. We're done with this. We'll go to the next section. I'm going to encourage Amal to take over.
Thanks, Ajit, for taking over the interesting parts. So I'll bore you with some data. So while at Blume, we've talked about quite a bit of the consumer stack, how we look at it as India 1, India 2, India 3, right? And like the last 2 years, we've talked quite a bit about it, how it has like been very hard in the country. One of the places where it is very reflected very strongly is that how it's sort of widened the divide between the rich and the poor, something that we refer to as the Matthew effect, right? The rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. And we see that in the wealth inequality as well. Sort of like how the top 10% are now earning even more, the bottom 50% are earning even lesser. And where it reflects is in examples like these. We all know how the state of government schools is not as good in India, but in the last couple of years or so, a lot of blue-collar workers who sort of like can't put their kids through private schools anymore are now sort of like, we're seeing the enrollment in private schools going down, right? Like more kids getting enrolled in government schools. And so this is like sort of an interesting statistic where we see that how it's sort of affecting India and how we also need to adapt towards how we build for India and how we build for these various consumer classes. Sajid.
Yeah. So quickly run through 2 slides. Vinay is here. I know that Vinay Sengal. So last year has been, and even year before that, but last year is really when the paying consumer, and we always talked about do Indian consumers pay, I think that's been laid to rest. Whether it's Cuckoo, Pocket, Stage, or just all our OTT brands, the larger ones, Indians have said we will pay for content, and that's kind of been laid to rest. I think that's really what we wanted to kind of say in this. The other interesting one on the media front, and I spent like nearly 2 decades in the Times before I came to Blume, and one of the industries, and hence it's one of the industries I track, and one of the most fascinating trends has been the rise of what is called merchant media. And Amazon, for example, is the world's 3rd largest ad network after Google and Facebook. True in India too. And having worked, for example, nearly 2 decades in Times, I found it fascinating that Amazon today makes more ad revenue than the Times of India. It's been that dramatic a shift, and Flipkart's not far behind. So the rise of merchant media has fascinated me as well. Amal.
Talking about e-commerce, again, so e-retail shoppers in India, roughly around 140 million. comparing that against the number of people who have access to the internet, which is around 700 million in India, that's just around 20% of people who've ever shopped online. Compare that to a China or a US, which is roughly around greater than 60%, right? So a lot still to be done there. But even then, like most of the GMV, around 50 to 60%, rests on a very small consumer base, right? 5 to 7 million. But even this progress in e-commerce has sort of been spurred on by quite a bit of advancement that's been brought about by logistic companies, right? And so the average delivery time has gone significantly down, and so is the delivery cost per e-commerce parcel. But just to bring it into perspective, the number of PIN codes that were being covered by organized brick and mortar retail, that's become 20x when you look at the number of PIN codes that have been covered by e-commerce companies, right? So it's about increasing the access to India 2, India 3, and now it's just like time for all the companies sort of double down on it and sort of increase the reach of e-commerce even more, right? Which is like, and again, penetration is just around 6% now, probably can take it much, much higher.
So it's got covered. I won't dwell on it much, a lot. So interesting parallel, and it kind of got covered. I don't think the revenue part got covered in the entire conversation, but the broadly, when you build for domestic SaaS, or what we call Bharat SaaS, you can't rely entirely on the Indian market for SaaS revenues. Customers pay, but the end state is really probably looking at a transaction, taking cut of the transaction or lending. So we kind of call it SaaS-tra, that SaaS is not enough, but you need to kind of have SaaS plus transactions. Great examples here, Khata Book, Class Plus, Practo, and broadly we are seeing two kind of models. I think Mukul said it really well, CFO or CMO, and this is actually an example of two of our portfolio. One's Procol and the other is Class Plus. And two different models. Procol sells SaaS to enterprises for procurement and says, I'll help your vendors get working capital. They're building that out. Early days, but the signs are great. Class Plus says, I will help you sell, your customers sell more to their customers, and takes a cut of that. Two very fascinating approaches. So this is the direction in which SaaS-tra goes.
Just approaching the last section, something that I've been very fascinated about this year, I think every founder I've ever met has had a problem with hiring and retaining talent. And this is how it's sort of morphed into in terms of data, right? And like a large component of the money that's gone out to these startup employees is now sort of recirculating as angel investments in startups itself. And what that sort of also led to is a segue into this statistic, right, or into this representation. And this has been fun because, I mean, it's now become easier for me to explain my job to my family. When you look at everyone, like everyone's becoming a VC, right? Startups doubling up as quasi funds, startups setting up formal funds. You have prolific founders coming back as angel investors. And then you have the Mensas and the Good Glam groups who are essentially roll-up funds, right? So basically very exciting for a person who's just recently begun the career into VC to see that everyone's becoming a VC. And I just really hope this continues further. And just on to the last bit.
Yeah, so just a quick one. Radhika is glaring at me saying 0 minutes. Arpit's doing that as well. Very quickly, the big trend we are seeing really, and worrying one, is that the best founders in crypto are no longer in India. Dubai is India's crypto hub. Add to that the global tech founders, as soon as they hit scale, go to Valley. We're seeing a very disturbing trend of the best founders moving from India, and theoretically is Indus Valley becoming a global Indus Valley. More thoughts here. I think we've really hit it. So this is really the Indus Valley report. It releases day after tomorrow. 100-odd slides, perspectives, ideas, data, insights. Love to hear thoughts from you. We'll kind of have it publicly launched then. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Ajay. Thanks, Amal. Now, as we get to the later part of the evening, let me lighten. I see some, faces waiting for the bar to open. Let me lighten the mood a little bit. Why did the electric vehicle have to go to jail? Any guesses? Because it was charged with battery. Okay, I'm sorry. Don't hate me. Don't hate me for that one. I promise you, it came to me as one from a long list sent by the EV investing team, and that should tell you just a little bit about how obsessed they are about EVs. And as they should be, right? Because the optimism around electric vehicles has really been the most paradigm-shifting development last decade. Our government's target that 30% of new vehicles bought by 2030 need to be EVs. It is truly the biggest change in mass mobility this decade. We're early believers in the space. We invested in Yulu in Fund 2, Euler Motors in Fund 3, and in the first year itself of Fund 4, we have doubled down on this conviction. As you all know, our Delhi Satrap, Arpit, and Venkatesh have now taken charge of this space at Blume, and will quickly take us through a glimpse of what they're seeing in the market.
No loud claps. You guys are too bored. Thank you. Thank you. Let's charge you up. Okay. So, like most other people, I'm guessing that everyone gets inspiration about electric space, electric vehicles by looking at Elon Musk and Tesla. Please raise your hand. No one has evoked Elon Musk right now, till so far. So I'm doing the job. We also started with that. But over the last 4 or 5 years, this space has been very, very fascinating. So fascinating that I can't sometimes sleep thinking about so many of the things that we discovered over a long period of time. One important thing that you have discovered is that the reason why a lot of the adoption has not happened in India is simply because the quality of vehicles available on the road was just simply not good enough. And now that has begun to change. We have a company, investment in a company called Euler Motors, which is changing it, and then so many other companies which are doing it. So while this is happening and the cost of adoption and cost of ownership has significantly come down, this is an important curve to remember, that the cost of ownership has crossed in many categories in India. At the same time, a lot of challenges continue to exist. And these challenges are very hard, the ecosystem-oriented challenges, which is why you don't see it happening as fast as all of us would have liked. Now, honestly speaking, very few people care about the clean and green aspect as much as the cost that this can reduce. There are 4 large cold start problems, which are actually a challenge. One important thing is that, of course, the vehicles were not available. Then component manufacturers don't exist. And because the vehicles don't exist, so there's a cold start problem there. The other problem is that the charging infrastructure, which some of our companies are trying to solve, doesn't exist. And therefore, you don't see good vehicles on the road. And also, financing options is another problem. But if all of this gets done, the important thing that you'll realize is that electric vehicle is a fundamental innovation. As much as all of us may like to imagine, it is not simply a new powertrain. Putting a battery and replacing the engine, it is not as simple as that. There are so many changes, and it changes the entire ecosystem. Just to give you an idea, it's a $300 billion industry, which is going to get impacted over the next 5 to 10 years and creates a fabulous opportunities for entrepreneurs, people who are out of startups already and are thinking of new ideas. They should probably think about it. So yes, we began talking, and Venkatesh and I went around and understood a lot of things. We are coming up with a massive report about what we learned, and hopefully you will get to answer some of the questions that you didn't know who to ask. Venkatesh?
So this is just a sample slide of some of the work we are doing. So like Arpit mentioned, we are planning to release the primer on 4th of April. And as you can see, we are projecting that the EV market, at least on the OEM side, is going to cross 30 billion at least by 2030. And let us actually look at more of the impact that is already being created by some of the companies we have invested in. So this is a video.
मेरा नाम अभिषेक कुमार मिश्रा है। मैं 2014 से गाड़ी चलाना स्टार्ट करा था। 2014 में मैं ऑटो से स्टार्ट करा था। तो सुबह 6 बजे से लेके रात को 7, साढ़े 7, 8 भी बज जाते थे। ऑटो चलाता था, जिसमें 1500 से 1600 रुपये की इनकम होती थी, जिसमें से 450 रुपये ठेकेदार को देना होता था। ऑटो जो मैं चलाता था वो CNG का था। उसमें सीएनजी डलवाने पड़ते थे 150-200 रुपये का प्रतिदिन, इसलिए मैंने इलेक्ट्रिक वाली गाड़ी ली है। मैं खुद चार्ज करता हूँ यहीं पे, अपना पूरा सेटअप लगवा रखा है। 3 से 4 यूनिट आता है एक दिन का, 3.5 घंटे में फुल चार्ज हो जाती है, जिससे मैं पूरे दिन घूमता रहता हूँ। 40-50% ख़त्म होते हैं, उतने में यहाँ आ जाती है अपना काम पूरा करके। काम है, सुबह 10 बजे जाता हूँ, कोरियर कंपनी में गाड़ी लगी हुई है, पार्सल छोटे मोटे एरियो का ही होता है, 4-5 घंटे में काम निपट जाता है। गाड़ी लेने के बाद यह है कि इसमें ठेकेदार को पैसा नहीं देना पड़ रहा है, गाड़ी मेरी खुद की है। अब अच्छा लग रहा है, फीलिंग अच्छी आती है। ये गाड़ी लेने के बाद अब मैं खुद का मालिक हूँ। गाड़ी में सबसे अच्छा ये लगा सर, इसमें आवाज़ नहीं आती है, लुकिंग भी अच्छी है और ये सीएनजी वालों से बढ़िया लुक है। पिकअप बढ़िया है, ले लेती है, आप चढ़ जाती है अपना। बोलते हैं गाड़ी सही है, आगे चल के 1-2 और लेंगे, बढ़िया गाड़ी है।
So what you actually saw was the kind of impact that is being created by Euler. Next up is a video which talks about how a e-rickshaw driver is actually able to earn more and send their kids to school and enable them to get better education.
जो भी है रिक्शे का ड्राइवर बन चुका हूँ। गांव में मेरे बीवी घर में सिलाई का काम करते हैं, 2 बच्चे। अब बच्चे को मैं ये सोच रहा हूँ कि कुछ भविष्य में पढ़ ले, अपने दिमाग लगा के लगन से अपना 2 पैसे बचा लेंगे, वही पैसा भेज देंगे। ये तो 1 मिनट लगता है, अपना वो आईडी नंबर होता है, वो आईडी नंबर से स्कैन करके 1 मिनट बैटरी का लगाओ, चलो। मेरे पास बैटरी का अवेलेबल है, ये स्मार्ट का, मेरे को बहुत अच्छा लगा। काम जब रहेगी तो मैं काट पीट के 1000 रुपया कहीं नहीं सर। मेरे इतना हिम्मत है कि अपने बच्चे को जहाँ तक होगी पढ़ाई कराए।
Next up is a video which talks about how YOLO is actually bringing more women into the labor force by giving them a tool which never actually existed.
मेरा नाम प्रियंका सिल, मैं कलकत्ता से हूँ। मैं बेंगलुरु पे 1 साल से हूँ। तो मैं जब यहाँ पे आई मेरे फैमिली के साथ, मुझे काम चाहिए था मेरे फैमिली को हेल्प करने के लिए। तो तब कोई काम नहीं मिल रहा था, लॉकडाउन की वजह से सभी बंद थे। तो मैं सोचा, मतलब दूसरा कोई मैं देख रही थी कि स्विगी में, जोमेटो में काम कर रहे लोग, तो मैं भी ज्वाइन करने के लिए सोची। तो उधर गई तो वो लोग बोला मुझे डीएल की ज़रूरत है, फिर बाइक की ज़रूरत है। तो मेरे पास बाइक भी नहीं था, डीएल भी नहीं था, पैसा भी नहीं था उतना। तो मैं सोचा दूसरे कोई तरीके से ज्वाइन करूं। फिर देखा योलो बाइक में सभी कर रहे हैं, एक फिक्स रेट है इसमें। फिक्स रेट में मैं पूरा वीकली 24 आवर्स मैं चला सकती हूँ उसको। मुझे पेट्रोल का या दूसरा कुछ पैसा एक्स्ट्रा भरना नहीं पड़ेगा। इसका जो बैटरी है, बैटरी का कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। मुझे बैटरी लो हो जाए तो मैं जाके चेंज करा सकती हूँ। ये बहुत कंफर्टेबल है, मतलब ये बैठने में बहुत कंफर्टेबल फील होता है। इसमें बैग रखने के लिए प्रॉब्लम नहीं होता, स्पेस है पीछे में, ये फ़ोन रखने के लिए स्पेस है इसमें, मतलब चलाने के लिए कंफर्टेबल है। बहुत ही अच्छा लगता है मुझे। मैं इसमें से पैसा कमा लेती हूँ, मेरे घर में थोड़ा हेल्प हो जाता है। अभी मुझे किसी से पैसा मांगना नहीं पड़ता, उल्टा मैं मेरे घर वालों को हेल्प करती हूँ। तो बहुत अच्छा लगता है मुझे इसमें काम करके। और थैंक यू योलो।
So yeah, our EV Prime is going to hit all of you on 4th April, so watch out for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arpit. Thank you, Arpit. Thank you, Venkatesh. You know, we've been speaking about India being at the cusp of innovation all night. But really, when you think of India at the cusp of innovation, that story began back in the 50s and 60s with India's nuclear program, right? How many of you have been able to catch Rocket Boys on Sony so far? We'll do a quick show of hands. Don't be shy. Yeah, I see lots of hands up there. Well, you have your own set of space carrots in the portfolio. Team Pixel, Aves and Kshitij, building hyperspectral imaging satellites, and started at the young age of 19 or 20 from bits. I'll be kind and won't do a show of hands to see what you were doing at 19 and 20. I don't want to answer that question either. Today we have a very interesting panel for you, bringing together the creator of Rocket Boys, Nikhil, and our very own space carrot from Blume, Avais, to talk about how the pace of innovation and the general space story of India has evolved. Avais, Nikhil, can we please have you both up on stage? Thank you.
Hi. You want to
Hey
say
everyone,
something?
just a quick introduction. I'm Avais, co-founder at Pixel. We are essentially space photographers. We build cameras that go to space, capture photos, and analyze it. And
So I want to just thank Karthik. I've never felt, I mean, I thought I was pretty intelligent, but then I got to be in this room today, feeling very inadequate, Karthik. A lot of very, very intelligent and very innovative people, including yourself, Avais. So yeah, thank you for having me here. Congratulations, Blume. Even my company, MA, celebrated 10 years last year. We're 11th year this year. We've been, yeah. And it's funny, it's called Power of the Underdog. And really felt like an underdog all the last 10 years, but now, thanks to Rocket Boys, things are looking up, yeah.
yeah, I think just Karthik called me up one day and he's like, you make satellites, it's close enough to rockets, and there's Rocket Boys. We'll put you and the creator of Rocket Boys on the stage and you go talk about Rocket Boys. So that's how it came to be. But I think we again started with Nikhil's story of, how they came to make Rocket Boys. And, it's one of the first shows that I have seen that really talks about the science story of India, that really helped us leapfrog a lot of countries, right? So it would be great to know why you thought it was worth making and sort of how it came to be. Yeah.
Why I thought it was worth making. I've been an armchair complainer for a long time. I mean, I just keep being in Bollywood for the last 30 years almost now. You sit back and you complain about the kind of, talent and people that you have to work with all the time. And I just realized, I just felt that, I can't have another generation of, my daughter is 15, she's a nice friend. And I can't have my daughter have heroes who are just Bollywood superstars and cricketers, I just felt that, I mean, what are we doing? How are we raising the next generation of leaders, And we got an opportunity to tell the story. So actually, it started off with actually a wonderful phone call from my the co-producer of the show, Siddharth Roy Kapoor, and he said, hey, do you know about Vikram Sarabhai? And I said, yeah, I know. I've heard a little about Vikram Sarabhai. He said, have you heard about Dr. Baba? I said, yeah, of course we've heard. I mean, you live in Bombay, and Baba Atomic Research Center is down. It's right there. So he said, well, what about doing a show about that? I said, who's going to watch it? Who will watch this show? Why will anybody do it? And then when you read more about it, and you read more about them, and you read about how, what they were, to call them scientists and to call them somebody who sent a rocket into space, or to call Dr. Bhabha a scientist who was the father of nuclear research, would be doing a disservice to these great men. They're just fantastic. I mean, they were literally the Renaissance men of 1940, 1950, 1960, and they had a wonderful opportunity to build the nation, so to say. So to get that opportunity to tell that kind of a story, I don't think most people would pass that up. And yeah, so I think it was very important to do it for new heroes. It's very, very important to do it for new heroes. I would think, I want to ask you a question in the sense that, so when I was doing my research, I happened to meet the chairperson of ISRO, Dr. Radhakrishnan. And I saw a lot of his, at that time, this was 5-6 years ago. We started doing the research 5-6 years back. So that's another interesting thing for Rocket Boys. It really took 5-6 years. You got to read. And I think that now that with the advent of OTT and the advent of interesting content that we are putting out over there, more and more filmmakers like myself as well as other people, my colleagues, doing a lot of research and of people whose stories are being told. So Dr. Radhakrishnan once, one interesting video I saw of his was he was in a panel with Rajdeep Sardesai. And it was, I think, the India Today conclave or something. And the topic was rotis versus rockets. And funnily, season 2 of Rocket Boys will come on 30th of October. A constant, in spite of being Dr. Sarabhai, in spite of being Dr. Homi Baba, a constant the challenge they faced was rotis versus rockets. Why space tech? Why private space tech? What is private space tech? Does India need private space tech?
Yeah, I think when we started, we were students, so we were automatically very naive, and I think that has helped us. We had no idea of the challenges that would come, so you only face them once they come towards you, and then you solve one after the other. The story of why space tech for us at Pixel is very simple. We love space. It's a passion, right? Every day when we wake up, we can't believe we get to work on hardware that goes to space. So it's as simple as that. But a couple of events that led to it. One was that we have all grown up seeing NASA and ISRO sort of doing a whole lot of launches, and ISRO sort of very recently as well. So always fascinated with space. But then in college, I was part of the Hyperloop team, and that was being organized. The competition for Hyperloop was being organized by SpaceX, the rocket, the poster boys for the private space tech industry. They're the one that essentially opened it up. And when we were there, they took us on a tour of the factory actually, and it was mind-boggling that a private company with no government support was actually able to build rocket engines and advanced space flight all on its own. And that got us thinking as to why that cannot happen here in India. We were especially seeing a lot of people coming out of US and Europe. And India has been a space tech powerhouse thanks to Dr. Sarabhai, right? When they started in the 60s, they had to leapfrog a lot of things. Like we directly went to internet from the satellites and broadcasting from the satellites without going through a lot of the steps in the middle that usually have to go through. So what they pioneered, either it was Dr. Baba or Dr. Sarabhai, they leapfrogged certain things. And it seemed like we were in a similar position with private space tech. ISRO had done a whole lot of stuff, but a single organization can't do it alone. And for private startups to actually catch up to what others were doing as an ecosystem, there needed to be private companies here. And it was always the principle that we should not just repeat and replicate what others have done in some other country, which is why we chose hyperspectral imaging for us. No one's done it in the world privately, right? We wanted to leapfrog other modes of private Earth imaging and directly move on to hyperspectral, because that's what got us to a point where we were self-sufficient with the Indian space program. ISRO has done a tremendous job over the past few decades. There is the ecosystem that's already set up there. There's a wealth of knowledge to build on top of. So why not make use of that? We have so much talent coming in that wants to work in aerospace, but apart from ISRO, where do they go? So I think, yeah, it was a combination of the fact that we were naive, it was a combination of the fact that we loved space, and it was a combination of looking and seeing and learning from history that, we did it once, why can't we do it privately now as well?
Yeah, I mean, very interesting. Because you're right. So because Incospa was a private, when Dr. Sarabhai started, he started with his father's money, his own money. Yeah, so I mean, there is a lovely scene that, I mean, I've been watching the second season's episodes, and it's funny that you're saying leapfrog. We have a scene like that where Dr. Sarabhai is explaining to Lal Bahadur Shastri's cabinet about leapfrogging. And it's a beautiful scene that we've written where he's trying to tell him that one day you will be able to, make all your payments from your phone. So I think we've taken a little liberty over there. We try to explain to them that why sending satellites into space is so important and how actually it can help with communication and at that time defense, etc., agriculture, medicine, everything. So I mean, I'm a follower of you guys. Yeah. We'll probably make a show about high image satellite imagery and what you guys are doing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, the reception for something like Rocket Boys was obviously fairly good. The actors killed it. So do you think there is sort of relevance of what we are seeing as to what happened in the 1960s in terms of the situation that we are at today, given startups and whatnot, in terms of what it means, what it means for them as underdogs? They were underdogs.
I hope so. I am most people call me a huge pessimist. In the sense that because you've seen so much failure from your flops that I mean I'm the guy who also made Chandni Chowk China, so I was responsible for shutting down Warner Brothers in this country, and then I mean they've got revived now. But yeah, so I always operate from anybody who comes and says. If they tell me, wow, what a film you made and wow, what a show you made, I just feel very suspicious. I say, is aadmi se baat nahi karna chahiye. This guy is not he's lying to me. So I'm a very big pessimist when it comes to my own work. But I just feel that, the interesting thing about Rocket Boys is that it was, at the end of the day, there was these two young men. And if you've seen the show, we've played them out. We've not played them as Dr. Homi Baba and Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. We played them as Vikram Sarabhai and Homi Baba. We played them as two young men in the 1940s who had a privileged background, where one had the hand of the Tatas on his head and the other had his father's legacy. But they chose at that time to not splurge. They chose at that time to rise, and because India was getting independence, and you had a prime minister who basically said that I want to educate and I want to innovate and I want the best engineering colleges in the world and I want the best business colleges in the world. And here were these two guys who said, we'll give it to you. We'll figure it out with you. And so I hope when I see there was a lovely clip of everybody looking into the camera, and there were young kids and I mean people like you, and so I just feel that yes, I think that it is very relevant. And the other thing that I think that most people would not know is that when India sent the Mangalyaan rocket to Mangalyaan satellite to Mars, it was sent at $74 million. The film Martian was made by Ridley Scott for $110 million, right? So that's the Indian jugaad, and the biggest jugaadus were Dr. Sarabhai and Dr. Homi Baba. They were jugaadus. They would do anything and everything to get it done. Whether it was Dr. Sarabhai didn't have uranium, he did it with monazite and thorium. There is a beautiful scene in episode 8 of Rocket Boys where, and it's a true thing, I cannot believe it. When my writer director would come to me with all the research, I say it's not possible. How did they do it? They did transport parts of the rocket on bullock carts, on bicycles. They pulled it with ropes. So because the hydraulics stopped working, and they lifted it up. So it's all true. So I think jugaad is something that India is what India is all about. God knows Bollywood is survived because of jugaad. And I think that that relevance is something, I think that's still relevant today. I mean, I think all you guys, I'm speaking on behalf of you. I'm sure that you are constantly doing some jugaad or the other, in some way or the other. So, I mean, why don't you tell me, is private space tech relevant in?
I think it's, space technology doesn't seem like it adds to the value, right? People are like, why are people spending on space when there's so many things to spend on Earth? But the TV, the internet, a whole bunch of other communication, GPS that we take for granted, maps, all of it has been possible because of space, which has, led to a manifold increase in efficiency. So space tech is relevant, first and foremost. But, I binge watched Rocket Boys the first Saturday that it came out, right? And it's very relevant to myself and Kshitij that we look at these two people that almost had nothing in terms of resources. They were starting from scratch. We were starting from scratch. and they were able to go on and do such things. So why not we can go do such things as well, right? So Jugaad is one aspect, of course, but I think we're at a position where we need to go beyond Jugaad to be able to actually work on things that are cutting edge that no one else in the world has done. And there's no reason why India can't build world-beating companies in space tech or something else. And that requires government support, that requires working with the government. Looking at how, transporting things in the bullock cart, we transported our satellite in the Innova. So it's just that the technology has moved a little forward, but we're still sort of making do with whatever we can and sort of competing there. Yeah, I think it's very relevant. It's also very inspiring to be able to see that, draw from history and say, it's sort of a different kind of history that we are trying to make right now, and no reason why we can't.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. So the right word is inspiring. I think that's the reason why I chose to make the Rocket Boys. That's the reason why I chose to make Airlift. That's the reason why, the kind of stuff that we are trying to do right now is, I think that it's very important for us to use the medium to constantly inspire. It's very, very important.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Karthik, for putting Rocket and Rocket together and having us here.
Thank you.
Fun
Thanks.
talking with you, Nikhil. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikhil. Thanks, Awais. It was great to have both of you. And Nikhil, I think turning 50 last year has been a turning moment in your career as well, right? You're done with the traditional Bollywood. Fantastic films coming out of MA. So keep up the great work. Sanjay has been a mentor to Awais and Kshitij as they were graduating out of college. Little bit of the backstory was, one of the finalists in Elon Musk's Hyperloop project. He has a nice selfie with Elon Musk. And, we were like cautious because we said space from India, as much as we wanted to become a multi-billion-dollar company in India, is global on day one. You don't service a country. You're up in the sky. And I think these kids are, going to prove us wrong from our initial doubts and going to build something great out of India. So they'll keep the legacy of the two old, the Sarabhai and Babas going. Can we have a photograph, please?
I'm going to pick up two words from what Nikhil and Awais said, inspiring and Jugadu. And I think that kind of is a very interesting note to start a little surprise panel that we have. We didn't put it in the agenda for a reason, but it's a great note to kind of end the evening with. But I'm going to request Karthik, since he's on stage as well, to kind of kick off the next and the last panel of the night.
Yeah. Thanks, Radhika. Surprisingly, we're only 14 minutes behind. So we'll try and wrap this, and then the bar will open soon. Thanks to the team which has pulled off the live streaming. I heard at one point we had 100 people watching in from other places, though we've lost some of the crowd to people wanting to meet human beings again after a long time outside of their homes. So can I bring up Neeraj and Akanksha, two of our star founders, and I'll tell you why we chose them. Please. We need one more mic. Yeah. So quick introductions. You saw the Spinny ad if you came in early enough. And Spinny is, I'll allow Neeraj to introduce what he does at Spinny. Neeraj is the second most valuable company. He runs Spinny. He founded it 6-7 years ago and has been building it fiercely despite all the odds. Akanksha, for a lack of a sort of better metric, is our most valued women founder company. So we're waiting for her to follow in Spinny's footsteps and be our first unicorn built by a woman founder in our portfolio. So Akanksha, good luck on that. And so I think I wanted to sort of use Neeraj's story to sort of inspire everybody in this audience. And Neeraj, using this first cue from me, why don't you also give a little bit of background and on Spinny and your journey? So I think, every year we have star entrepreneurs here on stage, and it's never boring to figure out what actually goes on in an entrepreneur's mind. Because I think every story is unique, everyone is different, right? And I'm always intrigued by what was that point in your life and your life history where a clock goes off and say, I want to be an entrepreneur and not a job seeker, right? And I'd love to have both of you sort of relate your personal stories on that front.
So before coming to your question, so Spinny is a full stack used car retailing platform in India. And at Spinny, we are trying to create an alternative for the customers where they can buy even second-hand cars with same confidence with which they would have purchased a new car. That is the kind of solution we are trying to create for them. So coming back to Karthik's original question, right, what goes behind in an entrepreneur's mind. So I think we always try to understand that what is the purpose of life, and getting an answer for that is not easy, right? So many philosophers have talked a lot about that. And of course, that is a very difficult question, right? But for me, entrepreneurship is a way of life, is a mindset, because we always want to keep pushing the limits. We always want to be on a certain kind of learning journey. We want to bring certain positive changes in people's lives. We want to build things which inspires people to do good, to do more. And entrepreneurship is one of the proven and one of the best ways to basically live your life that way. So for me, it is a mindset. It is a way of life. And Spinny is my third startup. So immediately after the college, I started my first company in 2007, operated that for 4 years. Then after that, started my second company, again operated that for 4 years. And in Spinny, this is already 7th year. And I intend to keep building it for rest of my life.
Super. This is your rest of life story here on this one company.
Yes.
Akanksha.
First of all, congrats to you and the entire Blume team. Before I talk about my story, I actually want to talk about how Love Local started, because you guys were still a very young fund when you invested in Love Local. And I remember when you had come to our little office in Dadar, and Karthik sat down, and we were in like one chota sa kamra. And he just put a piece of paper on the table and he turned it over, and it was the term sheet. He didn't tell us that. And he still sat with us for an hour and asked us lots of questions like, okay, I'm going to give you a term sheet. And I just, honestly, I get so much joy from seeing the success that you guys have seen.
Thanks.
And
Thanks, sir.
The video that you made, I feel really, really happy that you guys have gone from success to success. And I really, really believe that you are one of the best, if not the best, early stage investor India has ever had. And I hope that you guys just continue on the path and become the greatest fund ever,
Thanks, but yeah, let's get to your story.
So I just want to say that it felt really special to be part of this moment. And I feel very blessed that you guys were our first institutional investor, our first round. And I always tell other founders, I feel like someone above was looking out for me, that I met you guys and you ended up being part of our journey from day one of Love Local. So I just want to say thank you and congratulations. Coming to the Love Local journey, so just a quick snapshot. Love Local is very simply your trusted local shops online. What we're doing is digitizing India's local retailers so that we can transform how all of us shop in our neighborhoods with our kiranas, chemists, etc. And on the retailer side, giving retailers an entire digital stack to be able to sell online and over time transform their entire business. I think, I didn't realize why I built this business until I started to introspect on the journey that I've had personally. So just a little bit of context. I was born in Pune. I grew up in Pune and Hong Kong. My parents actually started with 44 rupees. I've been very lucky, my family's been very lucky in terms of where we started and the opportunities we've had. But my first home was in a basti in Pune. And my mom went to university for the first time when she was 35 because she'd never had the opportunity and we could afford it. And she went to university, she worked 2 jobs, she raised 2 kids and had no help. And that's kind of the context that I grew up in. And I'm very fortunate that the hard work that my family put in, that I had to put in, led to the outcomes that we had. So I was able to go to university like Princeton, which honestly, I don't think any of us had even context for that university when we were really young. And I've been working since I was very, very young. I was very lucky to become an athlete when I was young because in Hong Kong, they have a great government sports program. And I realized that context has really shaped why I became an entrepreneur retrospectively, because I have a very unique opportunity to have seen a journey that is not that common, right? To start there and to get to go to university and the type of university I went to, and then to have the opportunities that I had given where we started and the struggles we had at the beginning is very uncommon. And to be honest, the things that resonated with me is like the world is not very fair. Like I don't know why we had the luck that we had. Like why did our hard work give us results and opportunity when there's millions, if not billions of people out there working really hard and they don't get the same outcomes and they don't get the same results. And so I think somewhere in my back of my mind, I was like, okay, I need to do something about this. I'm motivated by creating a more equal world. There should be a more level playing field. And these are the problems that I want to solve because I would like to live in a world and live in a future or present that whoever works hard, no matter where you start, you should have the opportunity to be successful and you should have the opportunity to win. And now looking at Love Local, that's exactly what we do for local retailers, right? And I think initially one would ask, why would someone like me be interested in digitizing local retail? But the seed of that is really is that technology has come about and there's a real chance it can leave a lot of people behind unless we work as founders to enable and make technology accessible to every single person in society. And so I think that's at least retrospectively realizing how my background has played into wanting to build things and specifically solve this problem or these types of problems.
I think you answered my second question. I wanted to also see your motivation for why Love Local, why the idea. So Neeraj, why Spinny? How did that spark come? It's easy for a lot of the audience to brand you as you took an opportunity that was available, but I think there's always a personal story. So whenever we meet founders, we try to dig out that personal story. And it means a lot because that's what keeps you going for a very, very long time. Otherwise, it's very easy to get deflated on that journey.
Right. So very similar to Akanksha's story. So come from a very small town in Jharkhand, a town called Daltonganj. Born, brought up there, studied there till class 10th in a Hindi medium school. Went to Ranchi for my +1, +2. From there only I prepared for IIT entrance. Then joined IIT Delhi in 2003. Then after the college, started the first company immediately after the college, right? Because I was very clear that entrepreneurship is the thing I want to do, right? So because in entrepreneurship there is no ceiling, right? Ceiling is defined by you, and it was very clear that I wanted to do things at large, with large reach, large impact, right? Basically the kind of things I talked about, on Karthik's first question. So coming from that kind of background, right, then doing the first startup for 4 years, and that was into education. I used to meet lots of parents on daily basis from all kinds of backgrounds. Then doing the second startup in web media, right, and then after moving on from my second startup, took a small break to figure out that what I want to do for long term, right, because I can't keep doing flip-flops again and again. And I was very clear that next time also I want to do something of my own only, right? So I was not giving up on entrepreneurship, but I wanted to be sure that whatever I do next, that should be from a long-term perspective. And I was trying to figure that what that thing is, right? And I was clear that I want to start in any kind of haste. So in that free time, I also started doing angel investments very actively. So during those 9-10 months, I did 14 angel investments I thought that rather than investing in real estate or going for paid MBA, it's better to invest in startups. Even if I'm not able to recover or multiply my money, I'll get a lot of learning and I'll also be able to check my decision making. So that was the intent of doing those angel investments. And wherever I invested, my angel check was the first angel check in the company, not pulling in with anybody else, not following anybody else, right? Just doing the first check in the company. And out of those 14 companies, just one company could not raise any follow-up capital, right? 13 raised, remaining 13 raised follow-up institutional VC rounds. Few of those are doing really good these days. So if you look at my whole journey, so because of my experiences, right, since my childhood, I was very much able to see the entire spectrum of the Indian society. And I was able to relate that buying your first car is a very different kind of purchase, very special, very emotional purchase. It is a certain kind of unlock, for you. One of key events in your life, right? One of 3-4 key events. So those key events are like buying your first car, when you move up a bit in your career ladder, then buy a better car, you get married, you buy a house. So these are 3-4 key events in a typical life journey. And when you're buying your first car, that is the first event of that kind. So for me, it was very clear that this is a very special, very emotional, very aspirational purchase, but at the same time, completely broken. So for us, Spinny is not just about used cars. It is more about solving for that special purchase, solving for trust and experience, building a brand which can become synonym of trust and experience in the society, building a benchmark which starts inspiring more and more people to do something like that, so that you are also bringing down the mistrust level in the society. And at the same time, if you are able to build a brand like that, then under the same brand umbrella, you can do anything you want, right? At right stage, at right time, any kind of horizontal integration, vertical integration. So for us, Spinny is not just about cars. It is about solving for trust and experience. It is about building a brand which can become synonym of trust and experience in the society. And we know that to build a play like that, you can't build it just because of your business model or product or tech. You need certain kind of value system. You need certain kind of culture. Those things will be the real foundation. And then the product and tech and the business model will be the next level pillars. So that was
it shows in some promotion for Spinny. So that experience that he's talking about, my first luxury car purchase ever in life was a Spinny car last year. And
we delivered that car from Delhi.
Yeah, it came all the way from Noida to Bombay, because you've kind of fall in love with the idea of owning a certain car, a certain color. It's an emotional purchase, and it was the first interstate sale that...
First interstate shipping for us.
Yeah, that Spinny had ever done. So obviously I'm a fan of all my companies. So we have a shortage of time, so I want to get shorter, nippier answers on a couple of things. I feel like a lot of the challenges that come in building to scale. So ideas work from 0 to 1, 0 to 2, 0 to 3, 0 to 10, if that's an outcome of a long-lasting public company or a billion-dollar company or whatever it is all around scale. So I feel product, people, and you spoke a lot about product, so I won't come to product. People and Pesa are all required to meet that ambition, right? Very, very quickly. So can you speak of your experiences on maybe money? Akanksha, you have a very unique cap table. There's hardly anyone from India, right? And Neeraj, I would love for you to speak a little bit about people challenges. At early stages, how do you motivate people to see this kind of a vision and come committed for a very long term? And I think you've built an outstanding team. So that one question each, if you don't mind, and then we'll wrap.
So yeah, we have an interesting cap table. A lot of our investors are first-time India investors, including our latest round. So for better or worse, the latest round that we did, the pre-Series B, was the largest ever round done by a solo woman founder in India. And that's a sad milestone, but at least it's a milestone at this point, and we can do better going forward. But if you see on the cap table, I think it was primarily non-Indian investors. Honestly, I think it's a result of having to be very scrappy and being very used to, honestly, throughout my life, people telling me I can't do things, I shouldn't be where I am. So that doesn't really bother me. And when I moved to Bombay to start Love Local, I had never lived in Bombay. I don't have any family here. I had one pair of friends here that I had from my squash days. And I literally showed up in the city with like a PowerPoint presentation and like, okay, I'm gonna start a business. And what I've learned in life is just talk to people and knock on as many doors as possible. And that led me to Blume through honestly a very random sequence of introductions and events that I met Sajid, then Sajid brought me to Blume. And yeah, a lot of, unfortunately, because the system is what it is, in terms of like, let's look at the data. Less than 1% of VC funding in India goes to women-founded companies. Less than 2.3% of global funding goes to women-led companies in the world. And you think that number is going up. Actually, it went down. In 2019, it was 2.8%. In 2022, it is 2.1%. And a lot of it is earlier stage. The further out you go, unfortunately, there are fewer and fewer women that you'll find there. So the reality is you have to hustle. And I would love to keep my head down and pretend it doesn't exist, but I don't think that's the smart thing to do. And I'm a ex-sportsman, so I describe it as like you can't be in a match and pretend the opponent doesn't exist and then expect to win, right? The opponent is there. So study the opponent, analyze the opponent, adapt, and overcome the challenge. And that's basically, I think, the result of why my cap table looks like what it is, because I've knocked on as many doors as possible, and I have found phenomenal allies in men, in VCs here. But there are a lot of doors that have been harder to open, especially as a solo founder. And so I've knocked on doors across the world. And I've found people who want to ally and believe in what we do and champion what we do. And I will continue to do that. And I think things will get better globally here over time. But yeah, you just have to hustle and keep knocking.
It's an incredible story of hustle. If you look at a cap table, you'll have to see it to believe it. But last question, Neeraj, on people. How do you inspire folks to come in that early? I mean, and I think your 13 angel investments kind of gave you a sense of that kind of people that you back. I got a hint from there, but maybe we part with that. Because without that, there's no great startup, is my take.
So basically, most important realization for us was that, at the end of the day, everything is all about people. If you're building a startup, if you're building a product, if you're building a service, it is all about people, right? Customers are people. So there are all kind of people out there, right? So it's more about the right mapping, the right clubbing. And you need to be very authentic, very proactive about sharing the right vision, sharing the right reason why you are doing this, right? Why it needs to be done, for whom it is being done, right? How it will be done, right? So if you are, if you are that forthcoming, right? And if you are very transparent, and if you are genuinely authentic, then it becomes really easy to find like-minded people. And at the same time, you should be fine with the differences, right? And you should look for people who bring complementary skills to the table, right? And yeah, so if you are building your team with that kind of mindset, right? And if that authenticity is consistently visible throughout the engagement, and that is getting validated by certain kind of triangulation by any new potential member, right? You can't manipulate it, right? So people can see through it. Everybody is smart enough. So if you are authentic enough, then you will be able to find people who resonate with your cause, with that purpose. You can't be the only one who is moved by that particular cause, right? Absolutely. It's all about finding the right, matches.
Yeah, the one thing I've learned from the best founders who build teams, and I keep advocating to the younger founders, is that if you're building people who are not married to the mission in the first 3-4 years, you might as well not hire them. I mean, you can hire bodies and just put them to work and make them write code or do like dumb digital marketing activity, but it's not ever going to be the same. Neeraj is one of those folks who surprises me, right? Because you write anything on Twitter or LinkedIn or any place, he's the one who's monitoring it. He's so sensitive to brand. And I think we share that about us, Neeraj. So we're razor focused on everything that is around brand. And that's why I think we are who we are after 11 years. Right. And I see that every day in your brand as well. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for bearing with us. This is the last panel of the day. Please stay with us as late as you can. These Blume days go till 10:30, 11 if you have the energy. Bar and food will open up at 7:30 and right away, I guess. And within half an hour, there'll be food. So please stay with us. one small addition. Last year I was in Goa, and I saw a small potter shop, ceramic shop, and he had 2 paintings on the wall, and one of them was a unicorn of with a seahorse.
Yes, yes.
So actually, we have it in our office now. We bought the work. And I said, we should do something for our unicorn founders. and so I have if Sanjay, you can bring that on stage and we can give it to Spinny. So we just commissioned some work in Spinny colors, right? You can just unveil that and Arpit is the one who first, pursued our friend Neeraj in Delhi, and then convinced me to meet him. Was it at India Habitat Center that we met? India Habitat Center, yeah. And that was our very first meeting, and I said, "Haan, khelna to hai, aap manage kar lo," right? And that was the beginning of the journey. So here we are. Thanks, Neeraj, again. Akanksha, it's waiting for you to happen. So yeah, one panel picture, please. Thank you, Radhika, for all yours to wrap up after whatever Sanjay's last words.
Neeraj asking what to do with this. Just 1 minute. I just want to say before we break, Arpit, we used to meet Neeraj at the SDA market. And I think a word of inspiration for all the founders here is that if you can be ruthless in terms of execution and success, but yet be very humble, I think those 2 things can go hand in hand. And I think those who have seen Neeraj over 5, 10, 15 years, you're still the same person, but still ruthless and ambitious in terms of, not ruthless is the wrong word, but tremendously ambitious in terms of building a unicorn and being dominant, but yet being a very humble and nice person. Those can go hand in hand. So we just wanted to say that.
Thanks, Sanjay. Thanks for your kind words.
Thanks, Neeraj. Thanks, Akanksha. Thanks, Karthik, Sanjay, Ashish, Arpit. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today, especially those of you who flew in from different parts of the world. And thanks to all the speakers today for sharing their work and their insights with us. And finally, thank you to our sponsors, Indigo Edge. Before we, as Karthik mentioned, the bar is now open. Stay on, the party goes on, and I'd argue gets better, till about 10 p.m. or so. Before we wrap and you hit the bar and I can't possibly track you down, can we please do our annual tradition, the Blume Years picture with all our portfolio founders, our team members, and we get the lights on as well for the picture so that we don't look like ghosts on that ideally. And those of you who have done this will know this little inside joke, but Blume Years, when I say ha ha ha, you say hee hee hee. Thank you.